Hi. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mom Project's Mentor Power Hour. My name is Elizabeth Shackelford, and I am happy to moderate today's discussion with Claire Thomas, Kemi Akinyemi, and Alex Teamum from Hitachi Vantara. Today, we're going to get insight into Hitachi's company culture, DE&I efforts, and current priorities, as well as how to break into the tech industry, especially as a working parent and professional, and climbing the ladder as a working parent in a large company. A few housekeeping notes. This session will be recorded and shared via email to everyone afterwards. And we will have time for audience Q&A at the end of our session. So please add your questions into the comment section on the right-hand side of the screen throughout this session, and we'll try our best to get through them at the end. Before we dive in, I'd like to share a bit more about our speakers today. Claire Thomas is Hitachi's Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer and has been with the company for over 10 years. In her role, Claire is responsible for developing and implementing strategies for diversity, equity, and inclusion across the organization through programs that reflect the diverse backgrounds, passions, and interests of their current and future workforce. As a recent returner to work after 2 maternity leaves and a mother of 2 young boys, Claire is deeply passionate about supporting working parents to have a fulfilling career alongside their parenting journey. Kemi Akinyemi is the Global Corporate Human Resources Officer at Hitachi. Since the beginning of her tenure, Kemi has been responsible for providing strategic HR insight and knowledge in the areas of talent development, employee relations, compensation and benefits, along with training and career development. She partners with the HR team, executives, and business leaders to develop and align HR strategy to address business needs and to meet strategic objectives. Kemi is responsible for all people decisions and enables the people-first employee value proposition and build capabilities to ensure sustainability in the organization. And Alex Teamum is the resource manager for global delivery and oversees all digital, file, and content practices at Hitachi in North America. She's been a key contributor to the Hitachi team for over 8 years, holding various roles, starting as a contract project manager in 2014. She has multinational working experience and has been an integral part of significant account success, growing their business and strengthening the relationships. During her tenure, she's worked extensively across many business units at Hitachi, lately as part of the Kimball implementation team. Alex is passionate about Hitachi's parental policies and work-life balance as she became a new mom this past year. Okay, after those amazing intros, I shared a bit about you already, but we'd love to hear more about your background. Where did your career begin, and how did you uncover your professional paths and purposes that led you to where you are today? Claire, let's start with you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Oh, I'm hearing myself twice. Is anyone else, or just me? No. Okay. Yeah, thanks for having us. It's a great pleasure to be here. So I fell into the technology industry, actually. I finished university with a general business degree, thought I wanted to be a marketeer, got nowhere with my applications for marketing, like my first proper experience of lots of rejection, and then decided to apply for some big software companies and services companies for their graduate programs, and ended up starting my career at Microsoft, which was an amazing place to start. So I spent 5 years there in various sales and account management roles, and then decided I wanted to get a bit closer to the outcomes that customers saw from technology, rather than just the front end sales process. So moved into a services business, and that business was Hitachi, and that was 10 years ago. So helping customers kind of find new and innovative solutions of how technology could help their businesses and their teams be more successful, but still in sales, but I got to see more of the end-to-end kind of process and the outcomes that we drive for our clients, which is great. So I spent 9.5 years in sales roles, but in those 9.5 years, I've had a year out to backpack with my husband, and I've had 2 children. So I've got a 1 and a 3-year-old boy, both boys, and in some reflection and soul searching of what do I want to do and how do I make sure that whatever I do from a work perspective is meaningful because I'm leaving my children at home or in daycare. I decided that I wanted to make a change and move into the world of diversity and inclusion, join the HR team, completely different career path. And here I am 6 months in.
That's amazing. And Alex, what about you?
I started my interest in technology very early. I've assembled my first Pentium 1 when I was, I think, in 5th grade. So I've always been kind of hammer and screwdriver kind of person at first. And, then in college, I was running the student help desk, IT help desk. And so kind of went through there. I've also had, through family business and construction and project management, I had a lot of interest, and I knew I had a knack for project management. So when the opportunity to become a project manager in a technology company came about, it was really a perfect marriage of two for me. And that was not my first technology job. I've had Radio Shack jobs, here and there, where you kind of stay abreast with the newest and latest on the market. But Hitachi has become my first full dive in technology job, and it feels like a family of like-minded individuals here.
Oh, that's great. Kemi, what about you?
Well, first off, thanks, Elizabeth and the Mom Project for having us. To have a forum like this where like-minded, to Alex's point, moms can come together and just share perspective, it's phenomenal. So thank you. And on the flip side, to Claire and Alex, I am on the HR side in tech, right? So not necessarily kind of on the front end, but the back end. And I fell in love with tech companies with my first role at Texas Instruments. I think that is where I was able to say, man, not only HR can be global in nature, it's also it's complexity to it, right? In terms of figuring out talent, where do you grow talent? And so ever since my role, my tenure at Texas Instruments, I knew that I wanted to continue my career in the tech space. And so here I am at Hitachi Vantara, now working with leaders on the corporate side, finance, marketing, IT, and have an opportunity to just really see and flourish where technology has taken us till today. So it's been a joy.
Oh, I love that, and really see the impact. Now, let's shift into the culture at Hitachi. Claire, how does the company ensure diverse representation and career opportunities for women, women of color, and most importantly, moms?
So we partner with organizations like yourselves to make sure that we are sharing the opportunities that we have with as many networks that have women and mums in them. So making sure that there's visibility of all the roles that we have. And at the moment, we're actually globally, sometimes we're hiring thousands of roles a year. So we want to make sure that they're visible to as many communities as possible. And you do a great job of helping us with that. And then when people are within the organization, we have a number of support communities. We have a women's network. We have, various different forms of parental support. We have a mentoring program. So lots of different things. And then we also have a culture of helping each other out. Alex mentioned it feels like, a family or a group of like-minded individuals. I think, one of the real main reasons I've been here so long is that you can ask anybody pretty much for some help or support or a question, and they will help you regardless of how busy they are with their own kind of roles. And that's top to bottom. That's not like within a certain team or within a certain region or geography. Like, I feel like that's just pervasive across the whole organization. And of course, we want to do more in that space around inclusive cultures and making sure everybody can come to work and feel comfortable and bring their own stuff to work, right? We've all got things going on outside of work, right? I was saying before in our little warm-up call, I was like 2 minutes from putting my baby to sleep, thinking, is he going to be asleep on time to get on this call, because it's evening in the UK right now. You know, and that's a balance and a juggle, and we want to make sure our managers kind of support and provide flexibility where it's possible as well. That's another thing that's kind of part of our culture, you know, very much trust people to do their roles in a way they need to do their roles, less about where are you, what are your hours, you know, those sorts of things. So there's a few examples.
That flexibility is so important. And just to focus on this too, is Claire, how has being a woman affected your professional journey in the tech space, you know, and balancing being a woman, motherhood?
I honestly, I don't think it really has. And I think in some ways, if it has, it's been in a positive way. So, you know, I've spent the vast majority of my career until moving into this role being one of the only women, or one of a very few number of women in the room, right? Going into clients, talking about technology and buying and negotiating and finance, and hugely male dominated arena, right? And I think at the start of my career, I didn't really notice, or I did, but I didn't do anything proactively thinking this isn't right? We should try and encourage more women into this industry. But I think sometimes being different or having a different approach, like I've never adapted what I've done to kind of try and fit in. Maybe that means I've sold in a different way or engaged with clients in a different way, and it's worked for me, right? So I think that the big thing though is time off, right? So I've had 2 significant stints of time off for my boys. The first time I took a year off, and the second time I took 10 months. And being out and coming back, you know, it does have an impact, but it doesn't have to be a huge impact if you have a great support network, if you manage leaving and returning well, if you have a good company culture around, you know, not undervaluing the skills that people have learned, trying to juggle the nightmare sometimes that is looking after small children, especially 2 of them. You know, and all the skills you learn from that. So I think the chunks of time are probably the big impact, but actually the impact for me has been positive. I've learned new things, and both times I've returned from leave, I've returned into promoted positions. So again, that talks to our culture that we, you know, we're not forgetting people when they're out on leave.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about, you know, those assets that you get outside of work are assets inside the workplace, and how we need to talk about them and continue the conversation.
Yeah.
And Alex, do you have any insight too about, you know, your professional journey as a woman and mom in the tech space?
Yeah, it's really similar actually to Claire's, where I didn't notice the difference at first until I was in, you know, face-to-face meetings with clients sometimes. And I've noticed that a lot of, as a mom especially, you learn a lot of conflict resolution skills, and you know how to smooth certain corners and redirect for sure conversations even, or just these skills. And I'm sure fathers have learned those skills as well, but I know that they've become more pronounced once I've become a mother.
Absolutely, the multitasking. And Kemi, let's jump over to you. For those interested in being a part of Hitachi, can you share some insight into the application and hiring process?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, you know, Claire mentioned, you know, we range from in maybe one given role where an employee or candidate were to apply, we can range from hundreds of candidates to apply to thousands of candidates to apply, right? And so we try to have some consistency in terms of how we really source and assess, right? Sourcing, of course, is number one in terms of figuring out the criteria, figuring out who is eligible for the role. And then the assessment piece is looking at, okay, who really has the foundational skills, right? And so that's a consistent process that we go to. So we keep some of that unbiased nature out the process. Now when we get into the actual live interview process where we actually streamline the candidate flow, we're interviewing and we're talking to candidates, we like to be a little differentiated based off of what the role is, right? So especially for junior type roles, we want to give candidates an opportunity to talk to folks that are currently in the role, maybe folks who were in the role and maybe have left the role. So it gives a really unique perspective of where they can be if they were to join Hitachi Vantara. And if we know that the candidate is a great fit for the organization, we try to ask them, hey, who else would you like to talk to? What other insights would you like to know about the company? So we allow them to be a part of that process as well. So I think that's really what keeps us differentiated in terms of really that honing in into the fit of Hitachi Vantara.
Oh, I love that. And like asking them, who do you want to talk to? That's so incredible. And then talk to us about what type of candidates thrive.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have, values here at Hitachi Vantara, right? And I love what Alex said in terms of like this family-oriented feeling. And when you have a family-oriented feeling in a company culture, there's a lot of consensus building, right? So we love folks who understand that you're not in this alone. So when you come to a company, it's not just marching towards your own drumbeat, but it's really playing with a team. It's collaborating, gaining that consensus. And I love when I see folks who are staying high and curious on the mood elevator, asking questions, not coming just with the problem, but coming with the solution and an idea, right? There's always in any company, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to enhance something. So if we have individuals who understand that, but come with the ideas and solutions, it's always a key for us. So I would say those are the main key qualities that we really look for.
I love it. And Claire, hoping you can answer this one. For talent looking to re-enter the workforce and pivot, their career into tech, explain how Hitachi Vantara supports women and moms in this capacity.
So I'd say in a few areas, we have a huge amount of training available internally. Some is very role specific. If you're doing a certain technical role, you need a certain set of technical skills. If you're in the finance team, you need to understand, FP&A or profit and loss or whatever it might be, right? So things that are very specific to the role. And a lot of this is kind of self-paced, kind of online type learning. So you can pick and choose, and that means it's open to everybody as well. And then we have a huge amount as well of more, I don't like that, I was going to say generic skills, but they're not actually generic, and they're actually, in some ways, they're more valuable than the technical skills, because you can learn technical skills. It's harder to learn things like, confidence or public speaking or empathetic leadership or being an inclusive lead, those sorts of things that take time if they don't come naturally to you. So there's a lot of training available firstly, and that's kind of, some will be directed based on your role, but others will be up to you to kind of pick and choose. We have a fairly robust onboarding process. I say fairly because there's always room for improvement in onboarding, and we're still learning, like, what does virtual onboarding look like and how do we make it as interactive as possible, and all those things that kind of come out of the fact that we have a lot of our workforce still working remotely. But that's like introduction to the company. What are we about? What do we believe in? Some client stories, plus also who are the people that you need to know within the organization to kind of get started. So I think, to add to Kemi's list, the people that thrive here to a degree are kind of self-starters. They're happy to be pointed in the right direction, but then they go off and kind of make whatever their role is their own. So we have some of that is kind of system generated onboarding, and other is with your direct team and your manager, but there's a huge kind of process behind that. And then we have mentoring, we have buddy systems, we do have like a coaching and development program, so there's loads of different options. And then something we'd like to work on moving forward is more specifically where people maybe haven't worked in the technology industry before and want to come trying to find ways to integrate them, because they're people with little or less technical background probably need a little bit more upskilling around the technical capabilities. So that's hopefully coming in fairly short order. But for people that kind of had a break, even if it's a very long break, there's plenty of support available once people get started.
I love it. All of those things. I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Now let's give some perspective from the hiring side of things for our returners. Kemi, what is your advice for returners looking to transfer their skills as mothers, caregivers, parents on their resumes, or working to leverage those skills as assets in the workplace? Because, we all know they're assets, but let's hear from you about your perspective.
No, I love that. And, Alex mentioned, right, as moms, we learn how to redirect. We learn conflict. I mean, these are skills that we hone in every day in the workplace. And oftentimes when I speak to moms, they find themselves really stuck in this space. They feel like they've become rusty when it comes to the professional world. They have no idea what employers are looking for. They question their abilities. They fear if they can even if they can keep up with the changes, right, that they see. But they lose sight, right, in terms of some of those valuable transferable skills that you gain being a mom, right, and leveraging in your career. I have a 3-year-old. His name is Micah. And I tell you, when I say I use these skills that I'm going to really mention to you guys today, it's practical. I actually leverage it day to day in some of my coaching conversations that I have with leaders, with employees. So, you can really use those skills to assess what areas you're passionate in. I always tell moms, let go of that fear, right? Because you do have these skills, empathy, coaching, time management. Elizabeth, you mentioned multitasking, project management, conflict resolution, right? So these are skills that in a traditional route that we tend to say, okay, these are what we look for in future leaders, but we've gained it, right, in our day-to-day lives. So I always say, just take the time to think through those skills and begin mapping, right? I like to call it self-work. Begin mapping your strengths, your gifts. That's really important, because it's one thing to know your strengths, but it's another thing to know your innate gifts, where your heart and your head is calling you towards. Stay open and be proud of those accomplishments, and don't shy away from it. It's absolutely a valuable differentiator that many moms don't leverage today. So definitely leverage it.
Oh, I love that. I was telling these women earlier that I had just come back from my maternity leave. And, even just being away for that amount of time, it's like motherhood can be so isolating. You don't realize and you forget, what you bring to the table professionally, because you get kind of caught up in the day-to-day life of being a mom. So I think that's very, very, very important advice. Alex, we all know that Hitachi is an incredible company that prides itself on a supportive and inclusive culture. I mean, we've heard from all of you about how amazing it is and, how inclusive you are. But talk to us about working parent life at Hitachi.
Probably that has become my favorite subject. So a little bit of a background. My child is actually a product of about 8 years of trying and 3 years of treatment. And so he's my true miracle IVF baby. And so when he was born, I couldn't imagine being away from him for 1 minute. He's still at home with me, usually when I work. And I actually have a 6x8 foot playpen next to my desk. So when I came back to work, I also came back into promotion, and it was a new job for me, even though it's a familiar company, familiar team. But I had to do some traveling and meet with my new leadership team. And I shouldn't have been surprised when they said, bring your infant with you. And I did. And so he and I hopped on. That was his first flight for 5 hours. Needless to say, I was a nervous wreck. But he was in my arms. And so as a mom, I didn't have to worry, has my child been fed? Has my child been, is he crying without me? He was still a breastfed baby at the time. So I didn't have to juggle, thinking how much milk I had to stash or any of that. And he was a happy baby. And the mom part of me was so relaxed. I was able to fully concentrate on being a great employee and contribute fully to what my leadership team needed. And so part of that balance is being allowed to do that. I grew up that way. That was our picture. Sorry, I should have mentioned that was our picture at the leadership team meeting in May of this year. And I grew up that way, where my mom and my dad always brought me to work with them. And it was nothing really different for me to have my child with me at work. But in the United States, and I grew up abroad, in the United States, that's not really a culture usually. To have your, 1-year-old running around and you're in a conference room with a bunch of executives. But a lot of things have changed because of COVID and because of the culture and because of what companies have offered.
Oh, wait, we may have had a slight lag. Because can you all hear me? Okay. Oh, Alex might be frozen, but we'll come back to that because that was a very, very, very incredible story. Claire, can you talk about the policies and benefits and flexibility at Hitachi that makes, work-life integration seamless as can be?
Yeah. I'll get a personal anecdote as well before I talk about kind of policies and benefits. But so I have a different setup to Alex. I don't have a playpen next to me, but I have kind of experienced some of the same flexibility, right? So I'm part of the global leadership team. Most of those people are based in the US. The crossover of time zones is my children's bedtime and bath time. And I just had a conversation to say, I can't do calls, meetings in this 2-hour window. And it's blocked in my diary every day. And it's not private. It says, this is my kids' bedtime and bath time. Please don't book over this unless urgent, right? And everybody respects that. I get very, very few single fingers, right, requests. And they generally are, urgent, right? And it just has to happen at that time. So that kind of flexibility of, changing your hours or varying where you work, it's sometimes role dependent. We do have some roles in the organization that are a bit more specific hours, particularly in like distribution centers and supply chain and things like that. But, for most people, there's an element of choice about how do you organize your working day. And my choice is to protect that time wherever I can and work some hours in the evening after my kids are asleep, because that works for me. And it also means I can drop them off at childcare every day as well, or every day that I'm at home, which is great. And I really value being trusted to make the decisions, to just make my job work the way I need it to around my family. And I have an email signature that says that I work flexibly around my family, and I may send an email outside of core working hours for me, but I am not expecting a response from you outside of your core working hours. So there's small things, but they really make a massive impact if you're coming back to work. But policies and benefits, we have all the usual policies you'd expect around like parental leave, healthcare, options to kind of add in things on the healthcare, and these are kind of global, but I know most of the audience here is probably from the US or North American market. So in the US, we have something called a Well Perk program, where you can choose a fairly substantial sum of money to spend on anything around your own personal wellness or mental health. And that's up to you. We can provide options, but it's up to you what you spend that on. We have an employee assistance program, which is available to all employees globally, a fully confidential service to talk about anything. And we have, the companies that provide those kind of provide trained counselors where needed, mental health experts. You can talk about financial challenges. You've got a sick parent, you need some extra support. There's so many different topics you can talk to, and that's available to every employee globally. And we also add to that with our own internal mental health qualified first aiders. If you wanted to talk to a Vantara employee, You might have a bit more context. We have a number of those globally. I'm one of them. And then we have agreements with childcare providers like Bright Horizons for emergency childcare, or different arrangements, or family support. I'm looking down this massive list to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. We have some options to talk for parents who've got children with additional needs, and need support in that area, or getting help kind of finding the right education. And then the biggest policy we have is, like, let's all just treat each other as humans. And if people need a bit of flex, or if people need a bit of time off, or if something's gone wrong at home, go fix it, right? Come, take the time you need and tell us when you're ready to come back. Because, at the end of the day, people need to prioritize their family over their job.
I had a lot of thoughts about that, but first, your email signature, because if you weren't going to bring it up, because I was so impressed when I got your email a few weeks ago saying that. I was like, man, that's just, and I think it's empowering from the top down, everyone to know that if you email them late at night, they don't have to. And I think sometimes, especially when you're younger, it's like you feel frantic that you need to, but that sets a precedent. Mm-hmm. And Alex, I'm sorry that you tapped off, but is there anything else, that you wanted to add about, how your work-life balance and, being a working parent at Hitachi?
Yeah, and mainly, I guess I wanted to emphasize two things. Is something that Claire and Kemi already mentioned: having a supportive environment, having a team that is willing to work with your schedule and your needs, and support you as an individual and as a parent. And then also having a company that supports that. So having that flexibility to work, 4 hours one day, 12 hours the other. If your job role supports that way, you can do that as well. So, and making sure as a parent and as a mom, setting those expectations with your colleagues and with your supervisors and your team on what's gonna be, and like, in Claire's case, having blocks of time. I do the same thing.
Yeah. At the Mom Project, this is the first place I've worked where everyone puts like daycare pickup, or, like I put Fiona's swim lessons on mine, and it's like, just, that's the norm. And it's just such a nice place to be as a working parent. So it's,
yes,
hearing that makes me feel very happy as well. And since this is Mentor Power Hour, we definitely need to ask you all questions about your mentor and, the impact that mentorship has had on you and your career, as well as being a mentee. Kemi, let's start with you.
Yeah. So for me, I had several mentors, just in unique and different chapters and seasons of my career, my personal and professional life. And, I would just say, right, if you don't have a mentor, definitely look into it, right? Because a mentor that gives you perspective, not what you want to hear all the time, but perspective that is really going to allow you to think differently and make decisions differently, right? So, because if you're constantly in a circle where they're either yes and yes, you can do it, or everything is copacetic and great, then you don't necessarily get the perspective that you need. So look for someone that's really going to be a truth teller, that's going to be respectful about it, but also gives you unique insights that you may not necessarily see within yourself. And as they give you that coaching and that feedback, tap into it, right? I'm going to talk a lot of, what I talk about to my employees and my managers is this self-work, is that it's one thing to have a mentor to help guide you to that, but it's one thing for you to do the work, right? And so that's part of it. It's get someone that's going to allow you to really feel comfortable doing that type of work. So
Alex, what about you?
I would say find a mentor, but also be a mentor. And so nobody learns like when we're teaching. Mm-hmm. So my mentor has helped me overcome the stress of concentrating on too many small things and kind of seeing the bigger picture. Whereas when I'm a mentor, I can also pull away and share my experiences and realize that I actually am more than I think of myself sometimes. And understand that you are enough and you are doing a great job. And, the world isn't falling apart around you, though it may feel some days as a mom, you may feel that way. Yes, it's overwhelming, but it helps to not only have a mentor, but also be a mentor. Understand that you have a lot to offer.
Oh, I love that. Claire, how about you?
I've been distracted by the stories and forgotten the question. Is it why would you recommend mentoring, or an example of?
No, it's like mentoring? What is that's I can't look at the comments or else I'll be very distracted. What is your, what impact has mentorship had on you? And what advice would you give to others?
Yeah, okay. So I wouldn't have navigated my career and been in this role without mentors, but equally sponsors. And I think there's a difference. I think mentors help you with personal development, challenging situations, talking about career aspirations, helping you navigate, and perhaps also help you with, moving your way through an organization. Sponsors have access to rooms where decisions are made, and they talk about you in those rooms. And the mentor could also be a sponsor, but I think sometimes there's a role for both. My advice would be pick carefully. You need somebody that is going to turn up when you ask them to turn up, and spend the time and reflect on the things you've shared, and maybe have the right balance between advice giving and listening. I've had a few mentors that have done a lot of telling, and actually I think there's a balance between telling and helping the other person find their own way. Get prepared. I've also had mentees turn up and go, and you say, what would you like to talk about today? We've got an hour, and people go, that's not a valuable use of anybody's time. And aim high. I think a lot of people, I couldn't possibly ask that person there 3 levels above me in the organization. Why not? The worst they can say is, no, I haven't got the time right now, or thank you, I really appreciate it, but I'm not sure I'm the right person. But you don't know that. They might just say yes. So I think, think about who you want to be mentored by, but it's an invaluable experience. I also have had an external coach recently, a new experience for me. That is massively valued, because that person is not tied up in anything going on in the organization, has no bias towards any outcome, is completely agnostic. And I think that's a really valuable. So again, I think there's value of having somebody in an organization, but equally somebody that's maybe not so linked to the day-to-day within the organization.
Mm-hmm. And more neutral in theory.
Yeah, because everyone has a vested income. Yeah. Everyone has a vested interest in outcomes within the organization, right? So sometimes that influences the feedback that's given, sometimes in a really positive way, right? And sometimes maybe less so.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we have about 6 minutes before we start the Q&A. So we'll kind of do a fast round of, for all 3 of you, what are your best tips for balancing life and career? Claire, let's start with you.
If you can afford it, get someone to do the task that you do not enjoy. Mm-hmm. Outsource as many things as you possibly can. Mine is cleaning. Sometimes, very rarely, cleaning the shower in my bathroom upstairs is actually quite relaxing, because it's like some headspace away from the craziness of our house, especially when the boys are starting to get hungry or tired. But in general, I don't want to be spending my time cleaning, especially when I have less time than I used to with the children, right? So with my children. So if you can afford it, I appreciate not everybody may be able to. Try and find things that you can outsource to others, so you can spend the time where you really want to be spending the time. And my other thing would be, wherever you are, be present. Try and be strict with your boundaries. If you're at work, you're at work. If you're looking after the children, you're looking after your children. Or if you've got a different setup to that works for you, that make it work for you. But I went through a period of being very distracted by my phone whilst trying to watch the boys, and neither benefits from that situation. So I've now got a separate phone. It's in, when I'm not working, my phone gets left in the study with all my work stuff on it. I don't come in and look at it. I turn it off at the weekend. You know, like that separation for me was really important.
Yeah, like I found myself looking at my phone at bedtime and I was like, what am I doing? Alex, what about you?
I think like a little bit to bridge what Claire said, find what balance is for you. So whereas Claire said she's bogged down with her infant, if my infant is in a different room, then I find the mom brain of mine completely thinking about him. So for me, having a playpen 3 feet away from me works for us. So find what works for you, and I'd say stand your ground. Block those hours. Do that. There's a lot of technology for moms out there. So things that didn't exist 10 years ago exist to help you be a mom, help you be a work-at-home mom. So not stay-at-home mom, but work-at-home mom. And I think that's a new definition that we're promoting in the world these days.
And Kemi, what about you?
And for me, it's don't lose yourself in the process and the journey, right? I think, oftentimes as mom, we give 100% to kid, we give 100% to family, we give 100% to husband, we give 100% to work, and then we lose ourselves in that journey. So we don't find things that really bring us joy and that self-satisfaction. So for me, not only do I block my time in terms of kid time, but Kemi time. Like I need to work out. I need to have my mental space be clear and present. And so for me, that's fitness, right? Mm-hmm. So find yourself and the things that outside of the day-to-day things that require you to be so on that you can just let loose, right? So and that has been extremely helpful for me. So.
The working out, like I was getting grumpier and grumpier all week, and I was like, I think I just need to work out. Okay, Claire, this is our final question before we go into the Q&A. Let's close out with some words of wisdom. What advice would you give for all of the working parents who joined us today as they work towards achieving their career goals?
It's very similar to what Alex just said about finding what works for you around your kind of parenting responsibilities and how you divvy that up and how you work. But spend some time thinking about what you value, what your non-negotiables are, and what would give you meaning in whatever career or role you go for. And that varies dramatically from every individual, right? We're all so different and wired so many different ways that's what makes life interesting. But I think I didn't spend enough time thinking about that before I had children. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that since, because I'm much more focused on like, what am I going to leave behind? How do I get the most out of the time if I am going to be away from them? And that's all about like aligning to what's important to me. How will I know that I've had an impact, and how would I be proud of what I've done? So knowing values and purpose and things that are important, I think, then you can go find roles that match that and companies that match that. And you can ask really, really good questions about what the culture's like and what the company values are. And then you can decide, do they align to what I want? Am I going to feel at ease, or is there going to be a conflict or a clash? Because you don't want to be unhappy if you're going into a role and coming back from extended leave, or leaving your children with somebody else, or in childcare. Like you need to be kind of feeling pretty good about the job that you're going to, the work you do, and that you get a sense of pride and appreciation out of that.
Well, I was thinking back about what Kemi said about, these applicants asking questions and stuff. But if there's anyone, joining us for the Mentor Power Hour, you three have given us such a beautiful glimpse into Hitachi's, inclusiveness and being a working mom. Like you're living it and speaking about it, and, the playpen next to you. It's just incredible. So I think our viewers have a lot to take with them. And then I hope my timing's right. We're going to jump into the Q&A. we'll see some questions pop up shortly, but I will peek into the comment section, but I feel like there was a lot. Well, yeah, if anyone has any questions, pop it into the chat. But I think we can also, Kemi and Alex, if you guys also want to talk about, any last advice for working parents, working towards achieving goals.
Well, I'll be short, I guess. My boy is only 13 months, and I took actually an extended leave in US. I was off for 7 months. So I've only been a working mom for about 6 months, and I'm still figuring it out. But having a hopeful culture with it within the organization, there are other moms, and helping, having a helpful culture and the right culture within the organization. Helpful dads too. A lot of them stayed at home for the last 2 years, and they really understand what a working mom feels like now. So that is very valuable to me now in an organization. And if I ever have to look for a different position, or if I ever choose to, that will be definitely my non-negotiable.
Well, and I think too, after COVID, like so many companies have now stepped up to the plate in regards to making these things more accessible to employees. So hopefully things are, on the up and up in that regard. Kemi, what about you?
Yeah, I think Alex and Claire summarized it beautifully. The only thing I would just say is like, give yourself some grace, right? It's, I think when we get back into the workforce, we think we have to like figure everything out on day one. We got to have a schedule for this, then we have to have a mentor, then we have to have an advocate, then we have to have a plan. Then it's like, take it one day at a time, right? There is no rush. This is not a competition. This is a journey. We are on journeys, right? I thought I wanted to be a newscaster. I am not a newscaster. I went to school and went in DC and try to do that whole thing. And I'm in a different space where I was able to say, what are my gifts? Like, what am I ignoring that I feel like that I'm really innately good at? But I don't feel like that's either a career choice. How do I turn that into a career? That's the work that you give yourselves that time to do so, right? There is no rush to that. So just give yourself some grace. That's the only advice that I would say.
Yeah, like your career is not linear. And I think too, when you're younger or you've taken a break, you doubt that, but it's all a journey. We're all kind of figuring it out as we go. I mean, hopefully. But I do think, you have to remember that everyone's kind of gone through this path and changed gears, and it's typical. It's more typical than you think. Oh, finally a question. Okay. What is your favorite app that assists you with being a working mom? Alex, we'll start with you.
I love that. I'm going to say WhatsApp. It's a little different. It's not a scheduling app or, typically mom app. But being a mom, and especially a work-at-home mom, can feel so isolating, especially if your other half is, either working, like my husband works downstairs. And so we're technically not really seeing each other a whole day, or, in the office or whatever the case is. So staying in touch helps me be part of the team and feel that I'm not alone and have some encouragement.
Claire, how about you? I know we talked about Paw Patrol, but that's not an app. We talked about Paw Patrol earlier. But tell us, what is your
Amazon Prime?
Yeah, exactly. Anywhere.
Yeah, we were talking before the call started. We were talking about screen time, which is I don't know about anyone else, but I feel like I started as such a principled parent. Like, this is what we're going to allow, and this is what we're not going to allow, and it'll be this much time and these much slots. And then you're like, I'm trying to entertain and cook and get food on the table and get out the front door. And you're like, yeah, they can watch whatever within reason, whatever. So Paw Patrol not being on Amazon Prime currently for free is devastating in my household. When I was on leave, I had lots of apps around connection. So we moved to a new town in the UK, and I didn't know anybody. We didn't have kids when we moved here, so we didn't have that kind of natural, like you meet them at the school gate or in kind of parenting circles. So I joined a couple of apps to meet other people on leave, predominantly mums, and one of those was an exercise class where you could go and you could take your baby with you, and there was all sorts of different, there was some like pretty hardcore aerobics type classes, and there was a little bit more gentle kind of Pilates and yoga, and there were some things like kids, like children's baby singing and baby rhymes and stuff like that. And I know that's not about being a working mum, but actually through that app is how I built my network of other mums and dads in the local area. And, you know, they've come to my house to put my first son to bed while I was in labor in the hospital with my second one, because we don't have family. My closest family is an hour's drive away, so my mum couldn't get here quick enough. So, you know, they've, you know, basically like supported me with childbirth in a roundabout way, but then they're now some of my best friends, right? We help each other with pickups and drop-offs, and can you just look after and advice, and like some of the guilt as well about being a working parent. Like I've had this situation, and anyone else had that, and again, they're fairly neutral because they're not tied to the organization, but like that app and finding that community has been invaluable to me, both on leave and returning back to work.
Yeah, it takes a village. Kemi, your favorite app?
Yeah, mine is a faith-based. So I have my faith is very important to me, just kind of how I navigate life, how I think through some things, make decisions. And so there's a Christian family life app that I use where there's moms, they talk about, you know, working moms, they talk about how to learn your child, pray for your child. I mean, so that's been really valuable for me, just getting a different perspective from moms and in their faith, but different journeys of their mommyhood. So.
Oh, I love it. Another question, returning to tech after a break, I feel like I'm breaking into tech. Any advice for helping us stand out as candidates? I have been upskilling by volunteering and taking classes. Is there anything else that I can do? Alex, I'll have you take this one.
Let me think about that.
Okay. Kemi, what about you?
Yeah, you know, so far, what you're doing is you're doing the right thing, right? Upskilling. I see what you said. You were upskilling and retooling. If there's a specific job, right, that you are interested in, and go to that job description, read through the criteria, read through what's expected of the candidate. What are we looking for? And if there's skills that you feel like you're missing, go for it, right? Go for it. Just don't feel like you have to. And don't feel like you have to check the box and have everything on the job description, but the ones that you feel like are mandatory requirements, definitely spend some time taking whatever that course is, whatever that certification is, whatever that experience is. Go for that as well, and then and diversify. Be open, right? You may think that, don't pigeonhole yourself to just this role, right? Again, we talked about a lot of skills that you gain as being a working mom, so don't feel like that skill is a one-stop shop just for that type of role. Broaden yourself, look at other opportunities that you may be interested in, and really tap into a lot of things that you feel like you're passionate about. I would just say, don't pigeonhole yourself just to one thing.
That's great advice.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, of course.
Have a look at who we are as an organization, what we do, the work that we do, how we link back to our parent company, Hitachi Limited, and all of their ethos about social innovation and giving back to society and using technology to drive changes that will benefit all of us as humans and the planet at the same time. And think about what that means to you, and come to the interview saying, here's why I'm interested in working for Vantara or as part of Hitachi. That will stand out over, I have the skills of the role that you're looking for. If you have a connection to something that we do, or you've actually been proactive in researching about our company, or you've looked at one of our projects or programs or the clients that we work with, and you know something about them, and you've got a story and a link, that's so powerful. I think, I appreciate the technology world moves fast, and if you've had a break, I can totally empathize with feeling like you're breaking in again all over again. But storytelling and connection, and really understanding like why you're applying to us as an organization, that creates connection with whoever's doing the interview as well, right? Because they're working for an organization that they feel like they have a connection to as well. So I would advise doing that too.
And I would say, to help with that, you can hop on quite a few webinars. They're out there available. And you can learn where the company is going, what the strategies are, what the newest and the latest that we are considering. And like the two ladies before me said, look not just at the role, but at a company as a whole. And I think webinars are actually an easier way to project the future strategy and the future technologies.
Those are wonderful answers. Okay, I think given our time, this will be our last question before we close out. Great stories and very unique perspectives. For Kemi, what advice would you give to someone who's got no experience in Hitachi Vantara's industry or any of your markets?
Yeah, actually, Claire just answered that question, and Alex, right? Right, in terms of some of the storytelling, right? For me, and I would just to piggyback off of that, right, is we have technical and non-technical roles, right? So at Hitachi Vantara, we're not only looking for individuals who can go into a product space or an engineering space or an IT sector space, right? We are a global company, and us being a global company, we have functions that enable and support the business. So, going back to that, what do you like to do? What are you passionate about? If you are interested, right, in going into a tech space, I think what Alex and Claire mentioned is kind of doing some of that homework, right? Researching Hitachi Vantara, looking at some of the roles, figuring out ways or maybe things that you've done offline in your own personal time that can connect. I love that word, connect to the mission vision of who Hitachi Vantara is. Now, if you're also open to non-technical roles, that's a huge opportunity as well, right? And when I say non-technical roles, as a corporate function, I'm thinking about the functions that enable the business: marketing, IT, accounting, finance, right? Global supply chain. These are also critical organizations. So be open, right? And as you do your research and you do your homework, these are things that you're gonna really understand and see what you want to go into next.
I love that answer. You've given everybody, all of you, the three of you have given everyone a roadmap for really either breaking into tech, coming back to tech, or just a really lovely overview of, Hitachi's ethos, the inclusive culture. I appreciate our candid conversation. I feel like we could keep talking and talking, but you've been so candid, and I think really given a lovely perspective into both, Hitachi's as the company, and then also being a working mom. So this concludes today's Mentor Power Hour. Thank you so much for joining us. Reminder, this will be emailed to everyone afterwards. Someone put this in the comment box, and I just wanted to add this. Let us, if you're applying, maybe add that you're a mom returning from the workforce. I think that's a great point of view, because I think it's so important, and owning that story right off the bat couldn't hurt. Okay, well, Kemi, Alex, Claire, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that you've learned something new, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Take care.